All right, peeps, back to back tonight. Back to back Periscopes. Hope you guys tuned into the last one. We got a little breather, a little bathroom break with the dating relationship Periscope. But, my intention was to wait to do this COVID Cabal on Sunday, but stuff's been happening. There's the big press conference on Thursday. And all sorts of stuff with the certifications yesterday or today. But there's a big piece here. It's a big piece, and I think it's a harbinger of very very intense things to come. So, how do you convince Sydney Powell to cuddle with me? I don't actually know if Sydney Powell is married. I don't know if she's married. Twitter turned off. Everybody retweet. Twitter turned off tweet notifications for this COVID cabal. Retweet, retweet, retweet. But guys, we first got to do the wine, okay? So we had the Dane Relationship Periscope wine. Just had a little bit of that. Like I said, we're saving those bottles for Friendsgiving tomorrow in New York. But we've got a couple more Sicilian whites here. So just really quick, okay? As I said in the last Periscope, Sicily is an extremely varied place. Used to be known for high volumes of low quality wine. And now we're just doing whites today. Just doing whites. And now it's increasingly known for quality. In terms of the highest quality in the country, I would have to say that it clusters in Etna. Okay? So most of Sicily here, okay, it gets very, very hot all over this section. Very hot, very dry. As you get towards the center, it's much more lush. And actually, Etna, this is snow-capped. And what's really crazy is that some of these vineyards will actually get, like, fucked up because Etna's constantly erupting. So sometimes a vineyard will get, like, melted by the lava. So we're going to have a really nice, really classic, I believe it's Benati Etna Rosso next time. But I want to focus on the whites, okay? So this one is not technically a Etna Bianco. However, it's an IGT. However, I understood from them that it is effectively comparable to it. Okay, it's in the same general area, very high quality, very similar. So this is the one I'm most excited for. Now, I think in the past I've done an Etna Bianco, but so it's not like this is the first time we've done Etna. Although that was before I was doing wine school. This one, I don't know anything about, but it was told to me that this was like just absolutely incredible. So I wanted to compare the two nicer whites that we had next to each other. And you can see that they both got a golden color. In fact, this one's got even more of a golden color. Now, Muscatetta, which makes me think that maybe I should have paired it next to the Zabibo we had in the last Periscope because that's a Muscat. Am I a white or red wine or red wine guy? I'm honestly impartial. To me, it's about context. You know me in context, right? It's about context. Sometimes depends on the situation, depends on the season, and sometimes I feel much more about reds, and sometimes I feel much more about whites. I can tell you that I prefer lighter wines to heavier wines. I can tell you that much. So heavy-handed wines usually don't go so well with me, whether they're heavy-handed reds or heavy-handed whites. Usually not my thing. But I can appreciate them if they're good. Yep, depends on what they're paired with. I probably do. I mean, I'm probably doing with my parents. Prior, I was doing something like, I don't know. I would probably drink when I was in New York, maybe 3 days a week. Being mostly at my parents with all this other stuff, definitely it's increased. So I would probably say that I do about 3 glasses a day. 3 glasses a day is probably right. Some days it's more like 1 or 2. Sometimes it's more like 4. And I've had nights where I've gone to 5. But I tend not to try to go further than that because I mean, it's already too much, frankly. I mean, I'm not even like denying it, but I also understand. Well, that's Salman. See, this is the problem with you is you don't really listen. You don't listen. Like, what did I just say? I said some nights it'll go up to that, but normally it's like it's three. Three is the norm. Three is the norm. Um, which is still more than you should have over the course of a week, but in Europe, not so much. In France, we're talking about in France, we're like historically in France, like the men would drink 2 bottles of wine a day, and that was light wine. It was light, okay, it's lighter than it is today. Um, but yeah, anyway, guys, I've mentioned it. It's my vice. Whatever, whatever. I also understand. I know when I go to Poland, it's going to be reduced dramatically. That was one of the things I talked to God about when I was out in the wilderness. Um, but I think that maybe the reason for the feedback was because I had to do these COVID cabal periscopes. To be honest, guys, like you guys increase the volume here. You guys increase the volume here because doing the COVID cabal periscopes, I got to open new bottles of wine. It's a good thing I've got my family to drink this stuff with me. So, well, that's the thing. I don't really like beer that much. I have like beer occasionally. So, all right. So let's try the wine. That's right. We haven't even tried it. Whoa! Speaking of beer, okay, I gotta tell you, this smells like an IPA. I've never in my life smelled a wine that smells like an IPA. This is the Cabal. The Cabal did this to me. Whoa! Whoa! What's going on here? All right, guys, this is an orange wine. The guy didn't tell me. This is an orange wine, which explains why it's so. Which explains why it's so golden. Yeah, this is and why it smells so funky. The wine's fine, but it has tannins in it, right? Actually, I like orange wines. This is fun. So, guys, orange wines are white wines that have been allowed skin contact. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys the bottle. If you want to try it, you want to take a screenshot. You want to see if you can find it. It is actually a really good wine. There's a lot of there's like just tons of subtle flavors that just come and go throughout it. I went through like 5 flavors in like 2 seconds when it was in my mouth. It's really nuanced wine. I've had Czech wine before. Czech, like a lot of countries in Europe, the Czech Republic is the wine's generally pretty light. It doesn't have a sophisticated industry. However, you can produce good wine in the Czech Republic, especially when it's closer to Austria on the southern side. There's some parts on the northwest that are near the wine region near, I believe, Dresden, which I don't think I've had any wine from that area. The overwhelming majority of German wine is in the Rhine Valley and around there. But there's a little area near Dresden in Saxony, right? In Sachsen, in Saxony, which is kind of interesting. And it moves into the Sudetenland, right? If we want to get it down that rabbit hole. But so Czech Republic does produce some wine. Slovakia produces some wine. I would say Slovak wine is closer to Hungarian, whereas Czech wine would be closer to Austrian. Moravian wine. It's Moravia that really produces it, not Bohemia for the most part. But I've only had a little bit, and it's mostly been natural wine because it's in these regions where a lot of natural wine producers feel like they can experiment because the region doesn't have a reputation, so they can play around more. Whereas, like, if you're in Italy, I mean, Sicily accepted, I guess, in Friuli does a lot of uh, natural wines. But if you're in, like, Piemonte, you have all sorts of expected styles. So if you're a region that has, like, a history to it, it's kind of tough to experiment because people are like, what the fuck are you doing to the tradition? So it's the marginal regions that tend to have the most experimentation, as you might expect. One little last thing I'll talk about with wine before we move on, I do have to actually taste the other wine here, but um, Super Tuscans are one of the favorites. This is not a natural wine, but Super Tuscans are really, really big favorites. And Super Tuscans are Bordeaux varietals like Merlot, Cabernet, grown in Tuscany. And actually, they perform very well in a couple of regions, which at the just out of my mind for the moment, but near the coast. And they're super big, super heavy wines. Taste almost like they're from California. Let me say this real quick. Favorite wine bar in NYC is La Compagnie des Vins Surnaturels. That is, it's right. God, where the fuck is it? How do I describe this? It's right to the west of Little Italy. It's like around Little Italy, basically, but it's outside of it. It's actually near the police station in the area. Yeah, La Compagnie. Man, I wonder if we were in the same place at the same time because I know Caleb, who's the sommelier there, very well. I used to sell wine to him. So Caleb and I were like this. And Kaipo, the bartender, he's just amazing. He's just amazing. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, with Ajax and his girlfriend. I remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dude, you should have told me that. You should DM me about that. I didn't know. I didn't know that you and him were the same person. That's interesting. So, okay. So let me. What was I saying here? What was I saying? Oh yeah. So Super Tuscans. We're gonna talk more about Super Tuscans later, but I just wanted to seed here this little thing. The wine business is not lucrative. The whole joke about the wine industry is if you want to make if you want to make money in the wine industry, come in with a lot of money. It's especially not lucrative on the sales side of things. A lot of work, but it was good. It was good during a period of my business. I learned a lot. Drink barefoot, dude. I'm always barefoot. The Cabal is in wine business. I've actually been to a Cabal vineyard and I figured it out, and I have confirmation from the person who worked there. And then he ended up getting the shit kicked out of him at a bar I was at later that night. It was a very surreal night. I'll tell you guys that story at some point. But the Castello di Amore. If you want to take a little tour of a vineyard in Napa, that's probably near some underground tunnels because I know that there are underground tunnels in the Napa Ridge. That place was almost certainly connected, but it was the most Illuminati place in the world. I actually even got Illuminati wine pourers for my dad for Christmas. It had all the sort of it was crazy. It was actually crazy stuff. Um, this is the next one. I wanted to say this is the last thing, guys. I'm gonna tell you guys this: how to get access. I can't. You got to be a billionaire degenerate. I'm not gonna tell you guys the whole story. I don't wanna compromise anybody. But it was a crazy night. I can tell you, it was a crazy night. And I was just getting into this stuff. This is back in 2018, so I was like only a couple months, like really into it. Um, I would say that I probably started to get into it about like 9 months, like 6 to 9 months prior. So it was really surreal to be able to put it together myself and then have the serendipity of running into the guy later that night and being able to pick his brain. I was buying him drinks and all sorts of crazy shit happened. All sorts of crazy shit happened. I'm going to block if anybody look, don't say take the yellowtail pill again. I'm going to block you guys. I'm going to block anybody who says take the yellowtail pill. I'm going to block them. We're not doing it. Look, so guys, the point I was trying to make here, I'll talk about Super Tuscans later because whatever. No one cares. People have other questions. But the point is that they didn't use any, they use IGT, which was like a, non-denomination, right? They just use random territory and they refuse to use any of the official labels, and their wines were really good. So sometimes experimentation's good, sometimes tradition's good. That's the rule. I don't want to do it. Don't do it, Tiger. I'm gonna block you. I'm gonna block you, Tiger. Don't do it. I don't care if you made my masterclass. I'm gonna block you. Okay. Last thing about wine, this Etna Bianco, it's not technically an Etna Bianco. It's incredible. It's incredible. Phenomenal. Oh my God. Very, very refreshing. You got lemon, you got hints of that sort of bright oak stuff that you get from really high quality Burgundies. This is incredible wine. Holy shit. Guys, I got this wine at Italy. Italy is my look. I'm not knocking Trader Joe wine. We drink Trader Joe wine as table wine. It's not super expensive, and there's a lot of decent stuff there. I get kind of bored with the options, but I don't have anything against Trader Joe wine. Trader Joe takes wine from places that can't compete. They have their quality isn't good enough, and they have excess production. So here's a little secret in the wine industry: is that a lot of places, if they have excess production of something in a big year, rather than damage their brand, they create an off brand, and that off brand sells for a lot less. So if you know in the industry which brands are off brands, they come from the same vineyard, but they're branded differently. And so you can actually get quality stuff. And Trader Joe's has some of that. Trader Joe's also has places that are in the varietal, they're in the denomination, but they're just simply not that good compared to the rest of the denomination. But so they sell it as less because they can't compete on the bigger market. But so you can get like a Chateauneuf de Pape at Trader Joe's for $15, whereas a good one is going to cost you at least $35, if not $50. But people like the brand, so they'll be like, "I'm getting Chateauneuf de Pape," but it tastes more like an average Cote de Rhone wine. So wine's a mess like that. But look, guys, let's move on to the COVID portion of this stuff. Let's move on to the big stuff because my phone's going to run out of battery. I don't want that to happen. There's two things I want to talk about tonight, predominantly. Two things predominantly. Yes, black and white blackout equals shutting down the grid. Big, big stuff. Okay, this is big stuff. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we had a lot of Democratic politicians. We had Soros, we had Obama, we had Hillary, and all of them changed their color from their icons, their backgrounds from color to black and white. Okay, now there are a lot of people in Q who spend all their time trying to check out, what are the comms? What are the comms? Trying to figure out the comms. And a lot of times they're all over the place, which is fine. It's good to be, it's good to be engaged. However, I think we can say pretty clearly here that some comms are more obvious than others. When you have all of these politicians signaling with something like that, it means something. Now, maybe some people think it means that they've been killed. There are people like there are some people who claim that they've been dead for a long time. It's all planned. It's all an act. I don't know about that. I choose not to believe that. Not that I deny its existence. However, I think it's much more likely that it's a signal. If they're under a difficult situation and their communications are being monitored, which they are. So if you're targeted, right? If you're targeted, and guys, I want to make a little aside here. We have the case with Sidney Powell. We have the case with Rudy Giuliani. We have, and that press conference was incredible. You could feel the media in it break down. A lot of actually there were some okay questions. You could kind of feel like they realized they didn't really have much of an argument to put forward. Of course, they tried the usual bullshit spin, there's not enough time, there's no evidence. They send all these sort of contradicting things. But Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani do not have access. They do not have access to what Trump has. Not yet. And that's important because we want to make their portion of these things all public records, above board stuff. But Trump has the Defense Intelligence Agency, he has the NSA, and they probably monitor all this stuff. I mean, Trump knew it was coming. We have all communications, and also all communications monitored, but also this stuff happened overseas. Overseas, okay? So we're beyond any sort of situation here where Trump needs to get authority for something. He's a president of the United States, and there are foreign actors who are connected to the vote stealing operation through these servers. Okay, you have Venezuela, Venezuelan software, the companies connected to the CABAL, people who remember back in 2004 with Bush. God, what was the name of those? It had such a funny name, like Dominion. One of you guys put it out there. One of you guys put it out there for me, because I forget these names. But Bush stole the 2004 election. Diebold, thank you. Diebold stole the 2004 election. Bush did, with Diebold software. Diebold, this is what they do, is that there's something sketchy. Then another company buys it, and it gets transferred to another company, and it gets a new name. They just keep doing that over and over again. It's the same shit over and over again, right? So it's been confirmed now that those servers in Germany were picked up by Sidney Powell. Well, no, Sidney Powell confirmed that she had heard they were picked up by the good guys, right? But here's the thing. DIA has the goods. And Thomas Wichter said, he thinks that Trump may have monitored the communications going overseas. I don't know about that, maybe. But the point here is that this is a military footing. I want to point out something very serious to you guys. Generally speaking, we have 250 to 300 military planes flying overhead across the entire United States at any given time. Okay? 250 to 300. That has 5x. Okay? We were at, earlier this week, 1,100. Now we're at 1,200 to 1,300 now. Maybe it's even higher today. I don't know. But military's on full alert. And Trump remains out of the picture. We don't know where Trump is. Okay? He tweets, but that's all he does. Maybe there's a conference, right? He's kind of out of the picture here. So, big point here, okay? Things are happening. This is a military operation. It's a military operation. Whether or not it's all that information is going to drop before Thanksgiving or right after, I'm not certain. But everything that Rudy and Sidney are finding out on, through open source stuff, through the proper legal process, is being augmented by what the military has from signal intelligence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We mentioned this before. Chris Mills pulled the CIA out of Special Operations. Special Operations is now going under a separate command structure. Okay, it's basically on its way to becoming a separate branch of the military, like the Space Force. What does all this stuff mean for us? It means a lot. Things are accelerating, guys. They have been trying to force certification in Michigan and in Georgia, and it didn't work. The Secretary of State in both states was claiming that they were just going to go forward with it, but you had Wayne County rescinded it, and the Secretary of State is trying to claim it doesn't matter. No, sorry, it does matter. You just can't do it. They can't do it. They're all over the place. And this is what I've been trying to emphasize, and I think that you guys are getting that. I think that you guys, look, Georgia's done now. It's not done. We had in Cobb County. It doesn't matter. I really want to emphasize to you guys, it does not matter. It really does not matter, because when they are when you have documents being shredded in Cobb County, okay, when you have all this other stuff happening, you have like, we're finding voting machines lying on the side of the road. It doesn't matter. Ask yourself, why are they moving forward so fast? Okay, Kemp and his Secretary of State are moving forward fast because they're fucked. They're fucked. Okay, they're criminals caught. I mentioned this over a week ago. The high-speed chase. The high-speed chase, right? When it's a high-speed chase, a criminal rarely ever stops when they're being chased. They just keep going because they're hoping that maybe they can get away if they keep going. It does not mean that they're winning it. I don't really care what they do. Do you have any idea how many people have woken up in the last week? It's like overwhelming, the number of people who have woken up. Okay? They've been trying all sorts of shit. Tried doing it in Wayne County, tried bullying people, threatening them. Then you had them pull back. Michigan may officially certify. It doesn't matter. It's so fucking illegal. Everybody sees how illegal it is. Everybody who's a part of it fries. That's the point I'm trying to make. They get fried. And that, to bring it full circle, is why you are starting to see all the changing of color. In my perspective, this is a calm. They are moving into phase 2, which is why I called this phase 2. Phase 2 is we're going to go violent. We're going to take it to the streets. We're going to deploy our assets. We're going to start to, because they're in a situation, they can't communicate regularly with each other because everything's monitored. Everything that they do is monitored because they are now under not simply just probably federal investigation, but the military is identifying them as enemies of the state. And so if you're an enemy of the state, your communications are getting monitored. So they're going to change their things to black. They have these things pre-planned. When we're in a bad situation, we're going to change this stuff, and that means this. It means something. And I bet it means that they're going to activate some assets. So be prepared for some shit to go down in the next couple of days. Again, it's every week. It's going to keep building up all the way through the 14th. Every week, okay, guys, every week will get more intense than the last, all the way through the 14th. Every week. We might get a very brief reprieve before Thanksgiving. I don't know about that. Yeah, there was a shooting today. Yeah, active. Oh, there you go. Okay, look, active shooter in Wisconsin Mall. There you go. There you go. I don't take this stuff seriously. I don't take it seriously because I know that I understand desperation well enough. Guys, I was in the field. Okay, you can tell this stuff with women. If you start to understand enough about women, you understand subcommunication. You understand things that they say are not what they actually are feeling, not what they actually have there. You get used to understanding body language. You get used to understanding, if somebody's talking really aggressively, it means that they don't really have a lot of power. You get the sense of stuff, right? And then you layer that stuff all on top of everything else with Trump, what we understand about him, what we understand about the enemy. That's why when I get like troll comments, which, bless up, we didn't get any this Periscope so far. But it's like these people that they don't understand they don't understand that they are being completely used. They don't understand that they are being completely used by their enemy. They think that they're on the same side as them, where they're being harvested. Like, unless you can come to me with a higher level of awareness, there's no reason for me to listen to you. And it's not a matter of like keeping an open mind. It's like literally, this is what it's like. When we're on these periscopes and we're talking about stuff, and people say, you should keep an open mind. Listen to both sides. It's like, yeah, I'm going to listen to a 4-year-old tell me about chemistry versus a Nobel Prize winner. I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to listen to both of these two people tell me about a subject. Okay? I'm a very open person. There's no way you get to this level of awareness unless you're open. There's no way you get to it. But like someone tells me, they don't speak a different language and they're telling me to keep an open mind about how to, the basics of that language when I'm fluent in it. It's like you don't understand all the rules. You just learn how to say hello. Maybe not even that. Look at this. Active shooter in Atlanta, active shooter in Wisconsin. It's so fucking predictable. We see their comms, we see them put the shit out, and then we have all this stuff. Distract, 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 right? That's all they have. They are actually so fucked. They got such little stuff that they can work with. It's hilarious. So guys, look, we're fine, but it's gonna get more intense. Don't worry about like, oh, this corrupt governor pushed through a certification. It just means that there's going to be a noose around his neck later on. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything else. It means literally nothing else. We got the goods. We're crushing them. If they want to kill themselves in the process, I told you guys this when Trump said, I hope he sees the light before it's too late. He was offering Kemp a deal. He was saying to him, we'll forget about the fact that you took all this money from Dominion if you completely reverse course right now. That's what he was saying, basically. Trump offers people deals. Trump offers people deals. Trump does not, believe it or not, he does not want to get rid of people who have been cowards. He doesn't want to kill them. He's even happy to let them walk free. But they need to cooperate. They need to turn around. He offers them deals. Most of them don't accept it because I bet you anything that they're corrupted. I mean, they're corrupted. I'm not talking about like they're corrupted tactically. I mean that they are at their core demons at this point. That's it. That's it. The thing is, when you offer people who have taken a corrupt path when you offer them an out and they don't take it, then they're done. Then you have the full righteous authority to destroy them because you've given them a choice. You've given them a choice to turn around. So before I talk about some of the bigger stuff, right? Before I talk about some of the bigger stuff here, I wanted to get into vaccines. This Periscope. Before I go into that, I would like to talk to you a bit. Well, first off, we have to mention the big news about Rittenhouse, who just got out of jail. Rittenhouse, American hero, Kyle Rittenhouse, who uses Trump bucks. Kyle Rittenhouse uses Trump bucks to buy an AR-15, where he killed communists and anarchists who were attacking him. So bless up once more on Kyle Rittenhouse. Fucking American hero. Fucking American hero. I actually saw him on Tucker, or I saw his mother on Tucker. And, it was one of those things where you have to be very kind. I'll be honest, I don't think she's a very smart person. She's also very nervous, though. And I would not say made a very good public television appearance. However, it was obvious that she felt everything she was saying. Everything she said was very heartfelt. It was very real, and I give her much love. She raised a great son. She raised a great man, and I'm happy to see him out. And guys, Kyle Rittenhouse, there's going to be statues to Kyle Rittenhouse in the next 10 years. There'll be statues in Kenosha, Washington for Kyle Rittenhouse. That's it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Tons of statues coming in. Tons of statues coming in for heroes. So he's out. So he's out of here. So speaking about Tucker, let's talk about that real quick before we go into the next phase of this stuff. Kenosha, Wisconsin, not Washington. So everybody's getting really upset about Tucker and what happened to Tucker. Everybody's getting really. I'll say this about Kyle real quick. I mean, I'm not like a gun expert in the least, but from what I've heard from everybody who is, I mean, his responses to things were so absolutely incredible with the timing, with the trigger exact, that you have to believe that there was an element of divine support in everything he did, because it was one of those things, like it was like a movie, it was like a movie kind of targeting. Well, he's not in prison for quite a while. He's actually out. That's the whole point. He just got out of prison tonight, and that's the point I'm trying to make. He's out of prison. That's why I mentioned it. He's out. Our man's out. So let's talk about Tucker. Let's talk about Tucker here, because people were have been very upset about Tucker Carlson. And I have to say, I didn't watch last night's segment where he said those things, but it is disappointing. It's probably the second strike, I would say. He had a first strike a little bit ago. The first strike was relatively minor. It was forgivable. Look, I try to be practical about these things. Okay, I should be practical. The MyPillow guy actually, oh my God. Okay, did you hear this? MyPillow guy may have paid Kyle Rittenhouse's bail.
Wow.
Yeah. This is an inside family joke about the MyPillow guy, which I won't go into, but that's too fucking funny. That's too fucking funny. If Lindell paid the bail, that's too fucking funny. I'm gonna be buying a lot of MyPillows if that's the case. So I gotta process that for a second. So, okay. Tucker, people have been disappointed in Tucker recently. People have been disappointed in Tucker. What's true and what's fake? What's a bigger strategy? What isn't? These are really important questions you have to ask yourself when dealing with this stuff. I can tell you one thing I don't have any time for. I don't have any time for, because there are big boys playing the game, which, by the way, we're not big boys. We're not big boys, okay? We're not like the littlest. Tucker was involved with some things related to the deep state when it came to, kind of big conservative kind of business related stuff. No doubt about that. But I've said this in prior Periscopes. When you get to a certain point, you gotta play a different game. It's a different game you're playing. When you get to be primetime on Fox, okay, you get, with great power comes great responsibility, but also you get big offers and you get big consequences. Okay? Now, people have made some points about Tucker. That he came from family money. He's a WASP, right? Came from family money, but he's got kids going to college. He's got a lot of status to uphold. And so let's say that he does whatever he wants and Fox lets him go. OANN and Newsmax are not going to be able to pay him what he's owed, right? What his value is. All which is true. And we can talk, objectively saying that, well, he should just do it anyway. But then you have the practicality of the fact that he's a high-profile target, and it's not just about him. He's got his family. Solomon, do you have any evidence he went to Epstein's Island? Because I don't think that's true. I've never heard anything like that before when I've studied Epstein stuff. Right. And so this is my kind of perspective. This is my kind of perspective here. Salman, you're gonna have to DM me that. You have to DM me that Tucker on Tucker's Island. You're gonna have to tell me that, man. You're gonna have to show me it because I bet you anything it's not true. I bet you anything it's not true. So I want to point out the neuroticism of the right. Okay, super super neurotic. The right is so fucking neurotic because, and I'm not saying, look, I'm not saying trust Tucker, right? Don't trust is earned. Tucker's earned a lot of trust, and if Tucker continues to break it, then that's it. Tucker's done. Tucker's comments yesterday were stupid. They were stupid. Now, some people are trying to claim in defense of Tucker that he was actually trying to bring more attention to Sidney Powell. Sorry, this is dumb. This is a dumb theory. It's a dumb theory because Tucker could easily bring attention to Sidney Powell by talking positively about Sidney Powell. He could do the same thing by talking positive. You don't need to just simply talk negative about it. You could say, Sidney Powell, follow her. She's got all this information. If you want to learn this stuff, or I can give you the Spark Notes. Like, it's a ridiculous argument. 5D chess? No, I'm sorry. I don't think it's 5D chess. I think that Tucker is in a difficult position because he is now the most popular person on the Fox News network, probably ever. Probably ever. And let's get personal. Let's talk on a personal level here. Tucker's career was kind of destroyed. Okay, I don't know if you remember it. When I was a little bit of like a liberal cuck or whatever, I remember watching Jon Stewart, who was really intelligent. And Jon Stewart, I don't know if he knew this, but he got out at a good time because 2014 was kind of the hard deadline before things got really ridiculous on the left. And Jon Stewart retired. So Jon Stewart kind of had the run of the left kind of arguably having the upper hand from a narrative perspective because they could use, Bush and all sorts of like Romney like kind of buffoons as their foil to make fun of. And there was a whole thing where, Tucker had this show called Crossfire, and it was just like a total hack show, like total polarization. So basically, Jon Stewart kind of obliterated him on that because Jon Stewart was sort of a Tucker, in my perspective. I know people don't like Jon Stewart on the right here. They have different perspectives. I'm just going to tell from my perspective. I actually thought that he was, like, Jon Stewart did a good job throughout most of his career in pointing out the ridiculousness of the Republican Party. Now, of course, you didn't pay attention to the left. And if he tried to continue that shtick now, he'd look ridiculous. He'd look ridiculous. And you can look at Stephen Colbert, who I was never a big fan of, but Stephen Colbert is a total hack, like a complete hack, right? And you just can see all these people got payouts. I've talked about Cernovich. What they do is they develop a high amount of trust with an audience, and then they get made this offer. And then they abuse that trust. Now, the thing is, for many people, it takes a long time for the public to understand that they've been manipulated, right? Back in 2017, it took me about 6 months to realize that Cernovich had taken a deal. It took me about 6 months to realize that he had taken one. Jordan Peterson didn't take one, but he had to go through a drug overdose situation because he didn't take one. So it makes me respect Jordan Peterson more. Yeah, Stewart, I think, was kind of similar. He's in a couple of stupid comments, but for the most part, Stewart decided, I'm just going to get out of it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go to that level. I'm just going to get out. I don't want to go to that level at all. So, but look, it's too early for anybody to say exactly what's going on with Tucker, okay? Do not be neurotic and do not think that one segment where he makes these comments about Sidney Powell means that he's completely done. Okay? Don't do that. Don't do that because it's a silly thing to do. Tucker, from what I've seen from the exchanges, there's an element here that's ego. Okay, there's an element here that's ego, that he wanted all this stuff and Sidney didn't give it to him, and maybe there was some tension. I do think that Tucker is getting tons of pressure from Fox to toe the line, but I can tell you guys, I was listening to Tucker about half the week, okay? And Sean Hannity is going very, and I would listen to the first half of Hannity because it segues right into it. Hannity has been really crushing it on Fox with the voter fraud disclosures. So I'm just trying to keep an open mind here. I don't think that everybody should. I think that's fine to not watch Tucker for a bit, to show him your displeasure. Look, I'm not. I agree with you. I'm not saying that I'm like defending Tucker. I don't see a clear defense at this point, except that he's in a difficult position. Sorry, I didn't even finish my point. My point here, I was talking about the Jon Stewart shit. I want to make this point here. I want to make this point here. I will say this thing about Hannity real quick. I don't like Hannity. Hannity's all rhetoric, right? I don't think he's a highly intelligent person. But I'm just making the point that on his show, Hannity has brought in people like every night you have Kayleigh McEnany. Every night on Hannity, you have people who are talking about election fraud. Okay? Hannity himself provides no value, but he is bringing on people who do, at least the first half of the show. Okay, and he's got neocon tendencies. It was funny the other night we were watching it, and he was talking about all this stuff, different elections, and how they were, left claimed that this election was stolen, and my wife and I were like, 2004 election, well, it was stolen. Well, it was stolen. So it's like Hannity is a hack, but he's consistent. So to go back to Tucker here, what is relevant? Tucker's career was destroyed, and whether you like Jon Stewart or not, Jon Stewart eviscerated him in that exchange on Crossfire or whatever, making a parody of the fact that it was super low consciousness bullshit. And Tucker was humiliated. He was humiliated. Okay? And Tucker was given a second chance by Fox. Okay? So I'm sorry to all the conservatives out there who are super neurotic and want everybody to tell them exactly what they want at all times. But loyalty is complicated. Loyalty is complicated. And so if you're someone like Tucker who saw his entire career destroyed and was given a second chance and was given a platform to say whatever the fuck he wanted for multiple years, and the people who gave you all of that told you not to talk about a certain thing, my perspective, if I was in that situation, was I would not say that stuff. Okay, I wouldn't say it. But I understand why Tucker's not been our best friend in the situation with Fox. I understand it. I understand it on a human level, that you are asking someone not only to give up all that stuff, but to actually bite the hand that didn't just simply feed you, that brought you up. It's like killing a parent in a certain sense. All right? I'm not. Yeah, people don't want me to make excuses for them. It's fine, whatever. But you have to act like a fucking, like, if you want to understand how people work, you need to understand. You need to understand these various impulses that come into the picture. I do not think that by the end Tucker has turned. I don't think so, because I think Tucker is smart enough to realize that if he has been on this for this long, where things are right now, I don't think he's stupid enough to destroy himself. I don't think he's stupid enough to destroy himself. I think that maybe he's trying to, he's trying to. They've called in a couple favors with him, and I think that he is giving them those favors. But if he does this for 2 weeks, buy some time, he can go back. So let's just let's see what happens. We don't like, if someone says something you don't like and you've trusted him for a long time, he says it once or twice. Look, I'm not saying no one is a savior. Nobody's a savior. I'm not a savior. Nobody knows everything. You make up your own mind. You don't have to watch Tucker. I'm not telling you to watch Tucker. I'm just saying, understand the position he's in. Understand it. If you don't understand it, like, this is the difference between people who can play at a high level and people who can't. So we'll see. I would prefer personally if Tucker just didn't touch that stuff and he talked about other things. If he just went around it, if he went oblique, it'd be better. Like I mentioned in a tweet today, he talked about voter fraud from dead people. Right, easy topic to touch without triggering, the people on the Fox executive board. Cool, that's all good. I wish he would stick to that stuff. Let other people who handle it, who doesn't have that kind of obligation to. I don't think he should have set this up with Sidney Powell. I don't think he should have done it. I think it's a bad trend. I think if he does it again, then pull back more. But let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see. It just doesn't make any sense to me that Tucker would have gone this far at this point to then fully throw it away. I think it's just political considerations in the short term. That's what I think it is. But we'll see. We'll see. So, a couple other things I want to talk about here real quick. Just a couple other things. The first is regarding the Supreme Court. So there's a couple things going on recently. That, well, that's it. Thank you. Did I hear about the circuit courts being reassigned? They have been reassigned. And guess who's been reassigned? I might mix up one of these. We have Amy Coney Barrett assigned to Wisconsin. We have Clarence Thomas assigned to Georgia. And we have in the other two, we have in Pennsylvania and Michigan, I don't remember which to which, we have Alito and we have Gorsuch. Okay? Sorry, Alito and Kavanaugh. I don't know where Gorsuch is assigned. Yeah, Alito's the PA. So I don't know exactly what this means in practice. But it means something. And I think it's too much of a coincidence to see that all the Republican judges have been assigned to all the swing states. Okay? I don't think that's, and really, frankly, the four most conservative. I mean, Gorsuch is a consistent conservative, but in terms of the people who are like really out there and overt about it, I mean, it's literally it's Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and probably Barrett. Yeah, Roberts is on the D.C. circuit. So, well, we talk about the black and white photo stuff. Like, there's been now 2 active shooters since then. It's a signal. It's a calm to do something, probably because they're surrounded, probably because they're in a bad situation. They need a distraction, but they don't want to be intercepted. So we talked about the comms with that. So that's interesting, and I think it's a harbinger of what's going to happen. As I've told you guys, justice will be served in the Supreme Court. Justice will be served in the Supreme Court. But again, we don't even need the Supreme Court because Trump has all the evidence himself. But we're going to get the double whammy of the legal and military support of the hammer. And they're terrified. They're fucking panicking all the time. They're fucking panicking. I just love if people could internalize it. I would love it if you could start to view it through the correct lens. Because the thing is, on the third dimensional realm, no, I don't think it's going to be settled by Thanksgiving. And to be honest, I don't think I thought it was all going to be settled by Thanksgiving. I was hoping that the Supreme Court we would know from the Supreme Court that Trump had won it by Thanksgiving, but I don't think that's going to happen now. I do think that we might know that Trump won it by the way the energy is going by the end of the month, but this is going through mid-December. No doubt it's going through mid-December at this point. And I think that the first 2 weeks in December are going to be bad. They're going to be bad, so just be prepared for it. Okay, so the last thing I want to focus on here. The last thing I want to focus on here is the vaccine. All right, the vaccine. So vaccines are complicated. They're complicated. Couple different ways you can look at all this stuff. All right, a couple different ways you can look at it. Now, I'll dig into the deeper kind of, let's talk structurally about vaccines, how they work. The idea behind a vaccine is that if you introduce a small amount of a virus or something similar to a virus, that your immune system will identify it and create antibodies accordingly. Okay, so that was the idea with cowpox versus smallpox, right? And it's become this big thing for vaccines ever since. And there's a lot of evidence, to be fair, that a lot of these diseases have disappeared since vaccines. Okay, a lot of these things have disappeared since we've had vaccines. Now, the counterpoint is that a lot of other things have also changed since some of these, especially the more fatal ones, existed. So, for instance, you have polio. Polio was mostly something that you would get from swimming in contaminated water. And vaccines apparently got rid of polio, but also, you could argue sanitation did. And I've seen anti-vaxxers put up charts talking about this or that, about how sanitation's improved on this timeline and how a lot of these things have actually disappeared as a result of all that stuff. Okay, I'll talk about more about this stuff in detail later on. I'm currently doing some research on it, so I don't want to jump the gun. But I do want to talk about things in modern vaccines, okay? And I want to talk about some problems with modern vaccines. Okay, so the idea of injecting somebody with a foreign agent, like a virus, for instance, is that the virus will, how do I put this? Is that you will have an immuno response to it, right? And because you have an immuno response to the virus, your immune system will produce antibodies, and therefore you'll become immune to it. That's the idea behind the vaccine. Now, here's what started to happen, is that for a lot of these things, a lot of these vaccines, just simply injecting the virus wasn't doing anything. Your body wasn't responding to it. Now, I'm not a biologist, immunologist. However, there are reasons for that, because your immune system doesn't necessarily respond. You're constantly interfacing with the different viruses, and depending on your immune system, it's not, you're not necessarily going to have like a heavy reaction to it. Okay, but because, and I'm being generous here, because of the assumption that your body needs to have some sort of inflammatory response, right? An immuno response, because inflammation is simply an immuno response to this virus. What happened is that they started to add things to the vaccines that were not simply the virus. So that was initially mercury. Mercury is a neurotoxin. Mercury is one of the most toxic things you could inject into yourself. And so they put that inside vaccines, ostensibly because your body would respond to the vaccine with an inflammatory response, which was supposed to give you immunity. Now, a lot of people were dying, especially children, from this. It's called thermosil. You can look up thermosil. It's a mercury. It's not pure mercury, but it's a mercury oxidant or whatever. Mercury, by the way, is also really difficult to chelate, so to speak. So once mercury is in your body, it's like good luck getting it out of you, right? Mercury is not one of those things that your body gets rid of very easily. So after, I mean, and there are different opinions. The reality is that there's been no actual research on a lot of these things. Another thing here, guys, just as an aside thing, vaccines are not subject to the same trials that any other medication is. So they'll put, especially with the new COVID one, which we're going to get to at the end of this stuff. But vaccines, I'm not joking about this. I mentioned this like back in June on a Periscope. I'm going to reiterate it again. Their rationale for not doing trials of vaccines is that vaccines, doing trials are too dangerous. I'm not fucking with you here. It's too dangerous to do a trial. Therefore, we can't do a trial and we're just going to move it toward general production. Secondly, there's a separate court for vaccine injuries. So medical malpractice goes through a whole separate thing. That's like a regular court system. And of course, doctors are insured. But vaccines go through a special vaccine court where they're kind of capped out on $100,000. They get like people who claim vaccine injury get like $100,000, but there's nothing else that people are able to do with it. It goes to a whole separate court structure. You can't follow through with a regular medical structure. Okay, so even if you want to believe in vaccines, which I want to believe in vaccines, this is kind of crazy, isn't it? Isn't it kind of crazy that there's a completely separate legal structure around vaccines than every other medical thing, that they can't do trials of vaccines because that would be dangerous. So they're going to give it out, just bypass the trial system. All of this stuff is insane. If you were to look at it with any other medication, you'd think it was insane. But we've been so heavily told that we should just accept them. Okay, so you've heard of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. There's good evidence that, you notice now recently SIDS has stopped, or pretty much stopped. There's a lot of evidence that SIDS was simply vaccines that had mercury in them, because you're injecting neurotoxin into a baby. So you're going to, not just simply neurotoxin, actually, because mercury is a whole body toxin. Mercury is incredibly toxic throughout your entire body. It'll kill all the systems in your body. So you're injecting a baby with mercury, like no wonder it's going to suddenly die. And there's a lot of correlative evidence that this stuff occurred within days of them getting vaccines. Now, today, they've pretty much gotten rid of mercury in vaccines. I don't think that there's any more that still have them. They've mostly phased them out. But here's the thing, guys. There's layers to this, okay? They evolve with all this stuff. Thermosil, right? That was where the mercury was in. They evolve. And so they didn't change their philosophy that you need to inject things that are going to create an inflammatory response. So yeah, it's a preservative. It's a preservative, right? So remember I mentioned vitamin K shots with my, incoming baby girl. I am not doing that because of the preservatives. The preservatives are like a vaccine. It's not even necessarily the virus stuff that concerns me. It's what they add in with it. That's the main thing that concerns me. But it's a preservative. They'll say that's a preservative. So now what are they doing? Now they're giving you, now in the vaccines, okay, we have aluminum. Aluminum is a neurotoxin. Okay, aluminum is a neurotoxin. Now, your body, to be fair, mostly filters it out if you use it in deodorant, etc. because it's felt in the skin. Aluminum is not nearly as bad as mercury for your whole body, but aluminum, your skin has barriers to this, but if you inject it in your bloodstream, it goes direct to the brain. Okay, and it is a neurotoxin. When they dissect the brains of Alzheimer's patients, there's aluminum all over their brain. Okay, and this is a complicated issue, and I'm not claiming this is the answer, but I do think that it needs to be investigated. I think it needs to be autism. It needs to be investigated because autism rates have gone up dramatically as the vaccine rate has gone up dramatically. And guys, remember, 20 years ago when I was a kid, I had to get a vaccine. I had to get like maybe 5 vaccines. Now the average kid, now they want you to give your kid 100 vaccines, almost 100 vaccines, almost 100 vaccines. They want to give a baby within 2 months of being born. They want to give a baby a hepatitis B vaccine. Hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. Why would a baby need a hepatitis B vaccine? But people are too fucking stupid to think about this stuff. Okay? So, again, the question here isn't necessarily about are vaccines good or bad. I think it could be different. It could be complicated. It could be that vaccines aren't bad. It could be, within hours of, well, not for my kid. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But can we think about this for a second? Why is it so necessary to have this stuff? Why is it necessary? Why are they pushing it? Why are they even opposed to alternative vaccine schedules? Why do they need so many? I mean, this is stuff that I think people need to ask more questions about. Because you're talking about injecting in a baby neurotoxins when it's born. You're talking about doing that for things that the baby is almost never going to get. There's almost no chance the baby could get it. So why would it be a priority to do that? They have stuff, they have to put these eye drops in the baby when they're born because, well, the mother could have gonorrhea, and if the mother has gonorrhea, then the baby's gonna be blind. Well, what if the mother doesn't have gonorrhea? Well, maybe she does. This is what the medical system does. But it's more than that. There's deeper things behind it that I want you to think about. Okay? I am not anti-vax in principle, but the assumptions behind vaccinations are not correct, especially specific vaccinations. They're not correct. They don't make any sense. And if you have this conversation with a thinking person, they'll agree with you. They might not still switch, but they'll start to they don't have an answer to it. Here's another question. If a vaccine is supposed to stop you from getting sick, why is it a big deal if your kid isn't vaccinated? So you have this stuff like, well, we can't bring a non-vaccinated kid into a school of vaccinated children. But hold on a second. Didn't all those kids get the vaccine for the illness? So why would a non-vaccinated kid do anything to the population of kids in the school if everybody else was vaccinated? Isn't it your kid who isn't vaccinated who's the one at risk, not everybody else? But no, it's their kids that are at risk, even though they got vaccinated. Another one of these, let me think about this stuff for a second, because it doesn't make any fucking sense. It makes zero sense whatsoever. And again, you can ask normies this stuff. Now, I will say, and here are some points, and I don't have easy ability to explain it, which is why I don't want to go full-blown anti-vax. I try to be logical about this. Measles have seemed to disappear, except for in areas that have been resistant to vaccinations. And so these are points in favor of the vaccination side. These are points in favor of it. Not that I think measles is really that big of a deal, but just to give you an idea of that, this stuff is a little bit complicated. It's a little bit complicated, and maybe not all vaccines are created equal. Which brings us to the point I want to get to next, which is this current COVID vaccine. Okay, this is a bad vaccine. It's a bad vaccine. All right, the influenza vaccine is 10% to 30% successful in a given year. Okay, so it's basically useless. It's completely useless. By the way, more people got COVID if they took the flu vaccine than didn't, even if you control for age and demographic. But let's go even further than this. This is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine is, we have a pretty good idea of what the flu is. It evolves every year. But yeah, somehow the COVID vaccine is 95% effective. But you still have to stay at home, right? You still have to wear a mask. And you still have to stay at home even with the vaccine. You still have to do it because it's so effective. 95% effective. But you have to still do everything else to slow the spread. And they talk out two sides of their mouth. They say it's 95% effective, and yet it's not going to stop COVID. They say the same thing at the same fucking time. And people are so fucking stupid that they don't think, well, wait a minute. These two things do not make any sense together. All right? Let me tell you about some of the things that are in the COVID vaccine that came out. So we talked about aluminum, but it's not just aluminum. Inside this vaccine is something called, oh God, it's like, I forgot the acronym, okay? So please, I forget these names. Please, trust me on this. I can even retweet it. I can retweet this stuff for you. But we've known that this is in vaccines before. We're talking about 14-week-old Caucasian male fetus cells. That's in the vaccine. Now, of course, they took the cells from an aborted 14-week-old male Caucasian fetus, and they duplicated them, right? They duplicated them. Yes, they also have other DNA from other animals, other animal DNA, okay? Now, again, I'm not an immunologist, okay? But can someone explain to me how injecting a 14-week-old Caucasian male fetus cells into your bloodstream prevents COVID? What does it do? What does it do? Because I don't understand that. I don't think there's really a logical explanation for it. And if the logical explanation is that, well, injecting foreign DNA into you creates an inflammatory response, which means that your body is more likely to. That's all based on false assumptions, because the inflammatory response is downstream of your body identifying an actual enemy agent in your body. But if you just decide to create an inflammatory response, let's just give everybody fucking diabetes. How about that? That's an inflammatory response. Everybody's got diabetes. Now they're immune to all sicknesses. No, sorry, that's not how the immune system works. And I'm not even sorry, I'm not an expert, but I've listened to enough basic stuff on this to understand that there's no way, even logically, anything that they say follows. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Injecting a baby fetus DNA into your body prevents COVID. Apparently, that's important. They had to pick that exact baby fetus. Because, they have different bits of DNA that they can throw in there. And of course, no trials for this. They had a couple of volunteers. Which, by the way, if you believe that stuff, Joe Biden is president of the United States, right? Now, I'm going to read you some stuff, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I do know one thing that's true, is that luciferase, literally the patent name, you can look it up, the patent name is luciferase, okay, for vaccines. Patent number like 6066, right? Something like that. This new vaccine will fuck you up permanently. It will fuck you up permanently. mRNA, I'm going to read you some things. I've heard it's made in 3 parts. mRNA or mDNA modifying aspect permanently alter human DNA. 2. Hydrogel in order to slip a tracking device in without rejection. 3. Luciferase allowing detection and confirmation of vaccination. Okay? You have to make up your own mind with this stuff. You have to make up your own mind with it. But I can tell you that I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. I will never take it. And people get stressed out about Trump because Trump talks about this vaccine. But you have to understand the psychology of people today. 80%, 70, 80% of the population believes that vaccines are necessary to cure things. And again, I want you guys to remember labels. A vaccine, maybe the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, I'm not convinced that that's like a bad vaccine. I'm not convinced there's a lot of negative stuff in that. I think maybe that vaccine is like works and there's no big deal with it. The hepatitis B vaccine for a baby being born, I don't trust that because that's not a common illness that a baby's going to literally it's not a common illness. It's literally an illness no baby will ever get ever unless their mother has it. Okay? And a vaccine's not going to prevent the baby from having it if their mother has it because they passed it down already. But maybe the MMR vaccine's good. Maybe that's an okay vaccine. Maybe there's no real negatives with that. And that explains why there's no measles, mumps, or rubella anymore since we had the vaccine. Okay? Think about things in an individual level. But the COVID vaccine, you don't see anybody even sick from COVID. People maybe get oh, it's the fall again. Some people are getting a little sick, right? My nose is stuffed up. I can't smell anything. I'm not saying all vaccines are bad, but people think because they're stupid, they think of labels. And so someone says vaccine, it's like, oh, that equals everything's okay if I take it. Right? Fat-free, therefore I can eat as much of it as I want. Like, people don't really think about this shit. They don't think about it. So, if you think the people who are backing Biden and who want everybody to get this vaccine, mandatory vaccinations, where you can't leave the house and you can't fly and you can't, which is everything they're doing, health passport, etc. If you think that there's not some dark shit in this, well, you're wrong. You're wrong about that. I guarantee you that it's in it. I guarantee you it's in it. The Gates Foundation backing it. The very least, it completely blocks your pituitary. You're completely cut off from God's source. You become a zombie. So, just to close with this stuff, all right? I want to close off with all of these things. You gotta use your discernment. Trump is playing a difficult game here because most of the population has been convinced that vaccines are required to survive this COVID thing. But notice what Trump does. Trump promotes the vaccine, but he doesn't mandate it. He emphasizes therapeutics, which are non-vaccine medications like hydrochloroquine and other antibody treatments, okay? And we have to think about what vaccine Trump is going to ultimately approve. Vaccine. Literally, Trump could approve a vaccine that is saline. It could literally be an IV drip, and people could go in and get it. And that's it. Now, I'm not going to get any of them. I'm not going to get any vaccines. But for people who are asleep and they need that placebo, need to get the vaccine, one vaccine can be a nanotech thing filled with tons of foreign DNA that'll fuck you up permanently, and one can be saline water, and they're both called vaccines. Okay? So please use your discernment. The people you should fear are not the people who are like Trump talks about a vaccine. He needs to do that for people who are afraid. He needs to talk about the vaccine because people associate vaccine with cure. That's it. They associate it with cure. It doesn't matter if it doesn't even work. The cabal's vaccine, they've admitted doesn't work. It does not fucking matter. It's for the sleepers. For you and I, he's not going to make us take it. All right. So, gentlemen, I think it's good for tonight. Gentlemen and ladies, we'll be back again Sunday. We'll see what happens. Stay safe. We'll see. We've got 2 active shooters tonight after the black and white uh, imaging things. We just say no. Just say no. We're gonna have to do civil disobedience, guys. At a certain point, we're gonna have to do it. This is the reality of the situation. Do not accept a deal. Do not accept a deal. All right. I've been looking at this in Poland because Poland has forced. You have to get vaccinated or you get fined. Well, I'm going to pay the fine for my daughter. She's not going to get forced vaccinations. That's just the reality of the situation. Not going to happen. All right. I'll see you.